Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Shelly Speaks Truth. Welcome back if you are returning. Welcome if you're here for the first time. I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight for this very critical discussion. And before we jump into tonight's discussion, I need to go ahead and acknowledge our sponsors, buhosting.com, as well as urbancountryfilms.com. BUHosting.com has all your website needs. So if you are in the market for a website, please check out BUHosting.com. They also offer website hosting. And right now, you can get a website for $11.11. So please do not miss out on this special price. It is only for a limited time. So please go ahead and visit BUHosting.com. And again, a shout out to our production team, Urban Country Films. If you are a content creator and you are looking for a production team to help you with your platform, please visit urbancountryfilms.com, where you will find a host of shows, including my show, Shelly Speaks Truth, and others. Again, so please visit urbancountryfilms.com. Also, I would like to invite everybody to my Facebook page, Shelly Speaks Truth. Also, please follow me on Twitter at Shelly Speaks Truth, and check out the Facebook page for my novel, Grown Little Girls, on Facebook as well. Okay, I want to get into tonight's discussion because there is a lot of information packed into the discussion tonight. But before I do that, I do want to say this because a lot of times when we have these discussions, I do get comments and, people directing different comments toward me saying, when we have these discussions, a lot of people feel like you're talking down to them. And here's the thing. I don't come up here to talk down to anyone. I come up here to, share truth and share my truth and outlook and perspective on the things that are, hurting our community. And I don't want anyone to feel like I'm speaking down on them because that is not my intent. But the thing is, if you are looking for a platform where people are going to tell you that everything is a-okay and everything's just peachy and not acknowledge our circumstances, then this may not be the platform for you. And I do say that with all due respect, but I think that is counterproductive when we're trying to share information that people feel like they're being targeted, because that's definitely not the case. I feel like I want to provide something that is going to be, fundamental to us growing and learning together. So again, it's never my intent to talk down to anybody or make them feel like they're not intellectually on my level. That's definitely not the case. Everything that I say on this platform, I can reflect it back to me because I am part of the community. And I feel like these topics affect me as well. So with that being said, everyone seen the thumbnail for tonight's discussion, and it is, will Biden keep his promise to Black America? Now, for those of you who may be wondering, what promise did Biden make to Black America? We're going to get to that in a minute. And as many of us may know, the Black community was a large part of the voter base for the Biden campaign, and Biden has acknowledged that. So the first thing that I want to focus on is what Biden said after he was elected as president of the United States. He was still president-elect when he said this. He wasn't in office as of yet, but he did acknowledge that the Black community was a very pivotal part of him being elected as president. And Joe Biden did address the Black community, and he said that the African American community was very helpful with him winning the election. He said that they had his back and he will have theirs. So those are very strong words from President Biden when addressing the Black community and acknowledging the fact that the Black community had his back and pretty much catapulted him into becoming the president of the United States. Now, when Biden delivered his victory speech earlier this year in November, he did make it very, very clear that at a time when their campaign was at its lowest point, the Black community lifted them up. The Black community got behind their campaign when it was struggling. And he does acknowledge that the Black community, really did help them out. And, Biden went on to say that, many Black voters, many Black voters do realize that they did help his campaign, and he does have a plan in place to see to it that that our community will be addressed. Now, community leaders all over the country did get wind of Biden's acceptance speech and what he said to the community, and they said that they're going to call Biden to task on this because right now, as everyone knows, this is a critical time in the country for everyone. But as with everything, the Black community, unfortunately, always is on the bottom half of everything that, all the ills of society. And especially in times of crisis like right now, we do need special attention from the government to address our issues in the community. And Biden's team, with their plan that they said that they have in place for Black America, they do have a plan in place to go ahead and address the systemic issues in our community. And I do want to get into a couple of those things that is in Biden's plan for Black America. Just go ahead and outline some of these things and see what it is that they have in, what it is that they have in place for our community. And I am going to get to everyone's comments. So please get in the chat box and let me know how you feel about this, because I think that conversations like this are very crucial to our community. And we need to be paying close attention to what it is that these elected officials are saying that they're going to do for our community, because again, the Biden campaign and Biden himself has already acknowledged that the Black community was pretty much what got him elected. So, I feel like if we're going to be out there voting, then we need to expect something in return for our votes. It's only fair. So, one of the things that I want to point to first with the Biden campaign is their acknowledgement of the economic issues that the Black community is facing. And the struggles that our community is facing, especially in this time of the COVID pandemic. And Joe Biden's Lift Every Voice, which is what it's called, it's the Joe Biden's Lift Every Voice plan for Black America. There's some pretty compelling things in here that I feel will advance our community forward if these things are seen through. And one of the first things that Joe Biden has in his plan to address the economic impact on our community, especially since COVID-19, Joe Biden is saying that 90% of African-American businesses are being faced with being shut down throughout this, this economic hard time with the pandemic. And his plan does acknowledge this, and he's saying that those structural issues are largely because of the pre-existing systematic disparities that do take place in our society today. And it tends to hurt the Black community the most of any other ethnic group in this country. The Black community faces it the hardest. And, we don't have to go down a history lesson right now about why that is. We pretty much have a clear picture on the history of why, we have such economic hardships in this country. But it's good to see our elected officials acknowledging this, because a lot of times when people like myself and others in the community, we pinpoint this, people, they tend to say, well, what disparities, what issues, it's really not that bad for us. And yes, we have made some strides. I don't fail to acknowledge that. But the issue for me is, if the elected officials can acknowledge the disparities and they're getting plans in place to deal with it, why is it that we have such a hard time accepting the fact that our situation just isn't what it should be. And, that goes back to people saying, why are you talking down to the community? I'm not talking down to the community. I'm actually talking up to the community, if you want to be technical, because what I'm doing is I'm trying to get people to understand that we deserve more than what it is that we've been receiving from our elected officials. We go out and we throw a lot of support behind these people, and it's time that that support is reciprocated. We can't sit here and just say, we're going to wait for them to make up their minds. It's now time that we get together and say to them that, okay, you have your plans, and we want to be able to benefit from these things that you say that you're going to do for the community. One of the first things that Biden is acknowledging is that he wants to invest in African American businesses and entrepreneurs, because out of the 13% of the population, only 4% of small business owners are African American out of the 13% population. So there's a disparity right there. And the campaign has acknowledged that in the African American community, they have to invest in it in order for there to be more success as far as business goes, because there is discriminatory practices within lending and things like that. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. Joe Biden's team is also saying they want to close the income gap, because as I stated in other videos, there is a income disparity within the workplace where Black people, unfortunately, are paid less than other ethnic groups. And these are all very well documented things. This isn't just me saying this. This is there's several analyses on this, and people have studied this. And that has been something that has been pushed more and more to the forefront as we can feel the economic burn of the pandemic. A lot of people are getting hit real hard. So a lot of people are really on high alert about what it is and the economic injury that is occurring in our community. It's not anything to be taken lightly. It's something that we should be paying attention to, because at the end of the day, we're hurting the most. So it only makes sense that we pay attention to these types of things. But moving on with Biden's plan for Black America, he's saying that what his team, what they plan to do is they plan to ensure equal access to credit capital, because with their data and what they have assessed is that African Americans lack the capital that they need to succeed. African American businesses are rejected at a rate of nearly 20% higher than that of white-owned companies. And even when Black businesses do get the capital that they need, when they do get the approval, they only receive 40% of the funding, as opposed to white businesses that receive 70% of the funding. So again, we're seeing disparities within lending. And, one of the things that I notice people saying is that, why do you expect for anyone to do anything for you? You have the same opportunities that everyone else has. And while that may be true, just based on these numbers alone, from this analysis, we see that even within those opportunities, there's still discriminatory practices in lending, with everybody having the same opportunities. So just merely having access to the same opportunities does not mean you're not going to face discrimination. And I think that that's something that we have to pay attention to, because it's dismissive when people are saying these are the things that are happening, and you say, you hear people saying you're just making excuses. It's not an excuse. The numbers don't lie. The numbers are telling us that yes, the opportunities are there. But even within these opportunities, there could still be practices going on that are hindering our community from getting the capital that we need in order to succeed in business. And I think that that is something that, again, if our elected officials are acknowledging this, why are we so reluctant to acknowledge it? Why do we spend time arguing back and forth with each other about what is not happening when the data is right there for us. It's easily accessible and we can all see what is going on. Now, if we're going to choose to ignore it, determines the outcome. You know, it's going to be to our detriment to continue to ignore this data, because this is what's really going on out here in the real world. And we can't continue to ignore it. We have to address these things and we have to do something about it. Now, the Biden administration went on to say that they plan to increase opportunities for African Americans to obtain and participate in federal contracts. They also saying that they're going to make sure that economic relief because of COVID-19 reaches the African American community and businesses that need it the most. They also plan to provide African American entrepreneurs and small business owners with technical assistance. They also plan to do other things like advance the economic mobility of African Americans and close the racial wealth gap, as we went over. They plan to invest more in infrastructure in the African American community when it comes to housing. So they have a lot of things within their plan that can be very, very useful to our community. And I think that it is, you know, it is incumbent upon us to take advantage of these opportunities if indeed they are going to be awarded to us. They also went on to say they're going to put commissions together to combat gentrification. And this is one that stuck out to me the most, because when you think about gentrification and how it affects our communities, there's communities all over the country that were primarily Black communities. And then, you know, you had developers come in because they wanted to have easier access to downtown or to whatever, you know, to be closer to you know, developments in the community like shopping plazas and this and that. They wanted to be able to have easy access to these things, so they began to push us out of the communities through the gentrification process, coming in, buying up dirt cheap property, and then building and making it unaffordable to the people that were already occupying the community. And, you know, that displaced a lot of us and put us in an even more dire economic situation. And I want to say this because my thing is, an acknowledgement of these things is not complaining. An acknowledgement of these things is not acting like we're just broken down and we can't fend for ourselves. That's not what this is. But an acknowledgement of this is saying, okay, this is what the issues are. This is what's being presented to us. Now we need to take advantage of these opportunities, if in fact the opportunities are going to be awarded to us. Now that the conversation is being put on the table, we don't need to feel like we're asking for a handout. We need to hold these people accountable and say, okay, you've put this in place. Now we want to cash in on it because this is going to advance our community forward. And I don't feel like anybody should be ashamed of that. I don't feel like anybody should feel like they're begging, because that's not what this is. And you know, it really does upset me when I hear people, especially when we do it to each other. Because I had someone say to me the other day that it sounds like I want people to be oppressed. And you know, that it was crazy to me that someone would say that to me, because I'm not one of these people that want to ride on this oppression wave and I'm just so beaten down and downtrodden and I can't do anything for myself. That's not my message. That's not my goal. But my thing is if we are all in this country together and the government is slicing this pie, and they're going to be handing out slices of pie to everybody, why are we going to sit there and not get a piece of the pie? This isn't making any sense to me whatsoever, and it doesn't make any sense to me when in our community, we jump on each other's necks and talk down to each other and make each other feel like there's something wrong with us demanding something from our elected officials. There's absolutely nothing wrong with us having an expectation that we get something in return for our votes. I don't think that any other community in this country, at least I haven't seen this. And if anyone else has seen this, maybe you want to jump in the chat and, let me know, because I don't see any other community saying that they don't expect anything from their elected officials. I don't see that. So, like I said, if there's any other community out there that feels like they should go out there and vote and not get anything in return, please chime in, please let me know. But like I said, I haven't seen it. So I'm going to take a quick pause here from this segment and I'm going to jump into the comments. In the comments, Boogerwish Gaming says a chapter of Black Lives Matter tweeted, they think the Dems use them. Well, I'm going to say this because I was actually going to get into that in the second half of this conversation, where Black Lives Matter has been trying to get a meeting with Joe Biden and his team ever since he was elected. I believe one of the founders of Black Lives Matter said that she reached out to the Biden campaign after he was elected, and 30 days later, they still hadn't heard anything from him or Kamala. So that kind of gives you an idea where Biden and his team is when it comes to the Black Lives Matter movement, which is strange because Black Lives Matter is arguably the biggest Black movement in the country right now. At least that's what they're supposed to be. And at least that's what they present themselves as to the general public. They're supposed to be the biggest Black movement in the country right now. So I would think that if Joe Biden is tackling issues within the Black community, he would want to, talk to Black Lives Matter, which is supposed to be a huge representative of the Black community. So those are the type of things that really do seem kind of odd to me. They're riding this wave that they want to help uplift the Black community, but Black Lives Matter is still waiting 30 days plus to even get a response for a meeting. So, I understand why they would feel like the Democrats use them, because, they threw a lot of support behind the Democrats, just as the Black community at large. I think the Black community, at least like 87% of the Black community voted for Democrats in this election. So I honestly feel like the Democrats need to show up and show out for the Black community, because the Black community most definitely showed up and showed out for the Democrats in this election. Urban Country Films chimed in and said, I think the Dems are going to feed people money, but it's not what we think. It's there to keep us dependent. How I feel about it is, especially in this climate that we're in right now, I'm not taking independence off the table, but we have to acknowledge that there are people that are hurting out there, even people who, pull themselves up by the bootstraps, as they're always telling us to do in our community. We have business owners out here, which would, to me, be the prime example of pulling yourselves up by the bootstraps, building your own business and building something for yourself. But as we can see, even in this situation that we're in right now, business owners are hurting. People who are doing for themselves are hurting. So especially in a time like this, I wouldn't necessarily look at it as dependency or being dependent. I would look at it as, in a time like this, is definitely a time when the government needs to show up and support the citizens of this country. Because if you're closing down businesses, people can't do their everyday regular function, to do the thing, to get places that they used to go, or even go to certain types of businesses because of all these restrictions, then people are going to be hurting. And the government needs to step in, especially at a time like this, and represent for their people, represent for the people of this country. And I don't see anything wrong with that personally. I don't think that there's any issues with that. So, people have differences of opinion about that, but I personally don't feel as if there's anything wrong with the government stepping in, at least in the time being, and providing some type of economic relief to just as, working class citizens, business owners, whatever you want to call it. Right now is not the time for us to feel like we're dependent. People work like hell in this country, and the government needs to do something. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it on comments right now. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the second segment, and I'm going to provide some insight on why I feel like I'm not too sure that Joe Biden and his team are. I don't feel like this plan that they have for the Black community is such a high priority. And I'm going to get into why I feel that way. Um, you know, Day one that Joe Biden became president, he signed 17 executive orders. And with everything that's going on in the country right now with this pandemic, and as I just outlined for you, how his team acknowledges that the Black community is being hit hard by this pandemic. I think the numbers are up to like nearly 46% of Black businesses have either closed for good or on their way to closing for good. So they're acknowledging the disparities that are happening within our community throughout these critical times, and quite honestly, even before the pandemic. But right now, in the height of this pandemic, they're acknowledging that Black businesses are being hit the hardest. But day one of Joe Biden's time in office, within his first week, he signed these 17 executive orders, and not one of those orders addressed any of this stuff that he outlined in his plan for Black America. So I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy. You know, I honestly just don't see it. And the thing of it is that you have to pay attention to people's actions and not their words, because I can put together a plan. We do that all the time, especially in the beginning of the year. We have a plan for what we're going to do for the year. But as the year progresses, we see a lot of times a lot of those plans get scaled back. We don't get to them. We put them off. We procrastinate. So they do have a plan in place, but what type of action are they taking toward actually seeing this plan through and getting it implemented? Getting it implemented, because if Joe Biden can use executive power to do things like immigration reform and LGBTQ issues and things like that, why can't he take some of those same executive powers and put together a commission to address these issues that's going on in our community? And people want to always say that you can't expect a president to be the president of one particular group, but that's not true. Because as we see, the LGBTQ community and largely the Latin community, because that's who these people are really pushing for these immigration policies, if we're going to be quite honest about it. They're really focusing on Central American countries. That's their main focus. We see what happens a lot of times to a lot of the Black immigrants who come to this country. They get the runaround, especially if they showed up here, and don't have the proper documentation to be here. 9 times out of 10, they're going back out the gates. There's no act in place to give them amnesty or to put them on hold from being deported. We don't usually see that with Black immigrants. So it's really funny to me that they have all this focus on people who are not citizens of this country. And for the citizens of this country, they're being kind of put on the back burner. They're being told to wait. We'll get around to you when we get around to you. And it's kind of like hold up, because we've been told to wait, for decades now. We've been told that there's plans in place for our community, and we've been getting thrown breadcrumbs, quite honestly. We really have. So um, I just, I really just I don't understand, honestly. I don't understand why it is that when it comes to the Black community, there's all these stalling tactics put in place. But I'm gonna jump back into the comments real quick because I see here where another comment came in that says, "We need our own. These people will never empower us. When have you ever heard of a free people who were given freedom opposed to taking it?" And then they go on to say, "Yes, that is the plan. Make us need them." Well, I want to address the first comment about having our own because I've always been a big, huge proponent of us having our own. I preached us having our own just redundantly on my platform, the need for us to have our own. But here's the issue. We can't have it both ways because when we talk about having our own, there's a lot of pushback. A lot of people say, well, what you're trying to do is separatist. And it's not really separatist to want to be able to build your people up and have a community that is going to be conducive to the upliftment of the people. And, if we were doing for self, we wouldn't have to deal with a lot of these disparities that we're facing because we wouldn't be fighting for scraps at a table where, people don't really deserve that we feel to eat. But thing of it is if we're not going to put in the work that we need to put in order to build something for ourselves, then we need to demand something from our elected officials. You absolutely cannot have it both ways. It's either we're going to be in this system and we're going to operate as individuals and say we're going to get what we can from the system and we're going to build ourselves up on an individual level. If we're going to do that, then we're going to have to ensure that we are getting something for our votes. We're going to have to ensure that we are getting something from these elected officials, and we're going to have to ensure that these practices that are being put in place are dealt with, because we can't have it both ways. It's either we're going to build or we're going to demand something from the institutions that have been put in place within this nation. We can't keep on having these excuses where we make every excuse in the book for why we can't build. But then when we say, okay, well, let's demand something, people say, let's build. I mean, we can't have it both ways. We really just can't have it both ways. So another comment came in and said, so why do we even care about Joe's plan? Sounds like you are ready to give up and just stay under the thumb. I mean, this is not about giving up. Let me just address this. This is not about giving up. Again, this is about we're going to have to come to the crossroads and make a decision about what it is that we're going to do. Because if we're going to say that we want to do for ourselves, that requires a lot of effort. That requires a lot of work. We're going to have to do for ourselves, and we're going to have to literally do for ourselves, which requires us to get infrastructure in place that we don't currently have. And like I said, I am a big supporter of the Do for Self movement. I feel like, honestly, at the end of the day, that's the only route we're going to be able to take. Because as we see more and more people come into this country and be thrown into the minority bucket with us as Black people in this country, we're starting to see a lot of things that, we would have had begin to be spreaded out even more thinly. So yes, doing for self is the best option, but you have to understand and acknowledge the fact that a lot of our people, they want to lay up in this system and claim that they're going to be independent but they don't want to demand anything. And I mean, what sense does that make? If you're going to be in the system and not demand anything, then why don't you just stop voting altogether? Because voting should be transactional. You should be getting something for your vote. And I don't feel like there's anything wrong with saying that I demand something for my vote. My vote is a transaction. I'm going to go vote for you. What am I going to get in return? We see this from other communities all the time, and they're not told that they're being dependent. They're told that they're demanding what it is that they want. And we should be doing the same thing if we're not going to just separate and build for ourselves. And this is something that can't be taken lightly because, again, like I said, it's going to require a lot of work. So it's either we're going to do it or we're not going to do it. We can't be on the fence and, acting like we want to do something, but then when it comes down to it, we start reneging, and we start saying that that's too big of a task. Because I have had people say that to me. I have had people in comment sections on almost every social media platform tell me that it's going to be nearly impossible for Black people to build up a nation. And although I don't agree with that, I feel like if we're not willing to put in the work, is it actually going to happen? Because I'm kind of past the point of it just being something that we talk about in theory. There really needs to be constructive action put behind us building something for ourselves. And, if we're not going to go at it full throttle, then we're going to need to explore other options, which I feel like would be holding these people accountable. Again, everybody's not going to agree with that, and that's fine. I'm not even a big proponent of continuing to ask for something that we by and large are not receiving. But again, we're going to get past the point of asking, and we're going to have to start demanding, or we're just going to have to drop out altogether. And that's pretty much how I feel about that. We can spend a lot of time spinning our wheels, but at the end of the day, we have to come to terms with the fact that it's either we're going to work for what we want and do for ourselves, or we're going to demand it. So I thought I seen another comment come in, but I'm just going to go ahead and proceed. And get back to what I was saying about the executive orders, because I want to know from everybody listening, do you feel that it's fair for Joe Biden to use executive orders to address things like immigration and climate change, but not use executive orders to put together a commission to address the disparities in the Black community? Like I said before, the Black community came out in droves to support Joe Biden. The Black community turned states blue that would have otherwise been red. States like Georgia, states like Pennsylvania, even Wisconsin. he the Black community poured a lot of support behind Joe Biden, and I just honestly feel like it's a slap in the face to our community, because we're seeing right now what Joe Biden chose to do during his first day in office. He did not even acknowledge our community, even though his team has a whole plan in place that, that they're saying they want to implement for the Black community. Now, I will say this. There are some things that Joe Biden did address in his executive order, but those things are not really tangible. They're not tangible. And what it is that we're going to need in our community is tangibles. We need things that we can build on. So one of the things that Joe Biden addressed within one of these 17 executive orders was things dealing with discriminatory practices in business and different things. But, we've been dealing with civil rights for a very, very long time. And although civil rights is great and nobody wants to be discriminated against, I feel like they need to take aggressive action toward commissioning a board to get the Black community into a place where it needs to be economically so that we can build these institutions and we won't have to deal with so much of this discrimination because those businesses and things will be right in our community. And I would hope that a lot of our hiring practices would be geared toward our community. But again, I don't know. In the comment section, a commenter says, okay, he does not keep a single promise. Who is going to hold him accountable and how? Well, here's the thing. The people who are going to have to hold him accountable are going to be the community that voted him in. And, they said that they're ready to do that. A lot of these elected officials in different communities across the country that represent the Black community, they're saying that they're going to call Joe Biden to task. Now, I guess we'll have to wait and see if that's something that's gonna actually happen. But again, they're saying that it's gonna be different this time around. And that's why I bought Joe Biden's plan for Black America to my platform, because if we're saying we're going to hold these public officials accountable this time, then we need to know what it is that we're supposed to be expecting from them and what it is that they're offering to our community. Because if we don't know what they're offering to us, we don't know what to expect. And that's why we really need to pay attention to what it is that these politicians are saying if we're going to continue to be part of the voting process. I can't stress it enough that Black people go out in large numbers and vote. And it's nothing that you can say to them that's going to get them to stop voting for the Democratic Party. So again, I'm speaking for the whole of the community right now. If we're going to continue to vote for Democrats, we're going to have to stop letting them lull us back to sleep, and we're going to have to call them to task. And again, this is what these people are saying, these activists, these community leaders, this is what they're saying that they're in the position to do this time around. They're saying it's going to be different this time. So the only thing that we can do is obviously continue to do what it is that we're going to do for ourselves and those of us who want to build a community that is going to actually be a real Black community. I don't see us stopping. I feel like obviously we're going to continue to go forward with that. But at the same time, we do still have a very large portion of our community that is heavily invested in the voting process and is heavily invested in voting for Democrats. So again, demand something for your vote. That's all I'm saying. If you're going to participate in the process, don't do it just to show up, get a sticker, and skip home. Actually want something from these elected officials is all I'm saying. That in the comment section, commenter says, that's my point, we need a nation. They also go on to say voting doesn't even matter. That has been proven over and over again. Well, you're going to have a lot of people that's going to be hot on your trail for saying voting doesn't matter, because we push real hard to get out there and vote. And to a certain degree, I guess I agree with you on that. But I honestly feel like a lot of times voting definitely doesn't matter in our community, because we by and large don't get anything for our votes. And we don't even, before the election process even starts, we're not meeting with each other. We're not putting any type of political unions in place or doing anything that is collective, I should say. Because we go out and we vote as individuals, we don't have any type of collective body or any commissions in place where we're going to say, okay, this is what we want as a voting bloc and as a community. And it's largely because nobody has ever taught us the critical you know, how critical it is to vote as a unit. And because of our political ignorance, unfortunately, voting does not work out for us on any level, really, not even on the local level in many cases, because unfortunately, we just have not been taught how to vote properly. And that goes back to my point, and even the commenter's point before, we do need to act as a nation. That's something that we cannot avoid. We have to act as a unit because we see time and time again in this country where the people who are acting as a unit, even other minority groups, they're acting as a unit and they're getting things done. And as long as we're divided and we're arguing back and forth with each other and we're kind of just you know, in our little circles or whatever, and we're telling people who want to build that is something that is going to be nearly impossible to do, we're already kind of defeating ourselves before we even begin to start. So that's really something that you know, I hope that we would stop doing, because when you tell yourself that you can't do something, you've already defeated yourself. And we're a very resilient people. So I pretty much feel like there isn't anything that we can't do. I mean, honestly, just look at how far we've come already. I know there's still a long way to go, but we're definitely not where we used to be. So if we keep pushing forward and we continue with that can-do spirit that we've always had, then we are going to, you know, we're going to reach heights that we just don't seem to think that we can reach right now. Back in the comment section, it says presidents are chosen. Damn that process. Well, that's a whole other topic, you know. That's a whole other topic about presidents being chosen. And again, with that chosen president, you better try to get what you can get out of him and his cabinet while he's there. But that's just me. You know, again, like I said, I'm in support of both. I'm in support of us getting whatever it is that we can get from these officials, and I'm also in support of us doing for ourselves. And I think that there's nothing wrong with the two. I don't think that we have to put all of our eggs in one basket, because what we have to think about when it comes to us building a nation for ourselves and building our own institutions and infrastructure, whatever we get from the system can be used toward that effort. So I don't think it's something that we should just completely take off the table. I feel like it's our just due. It's not like they don't owe it to us. And I'm not saying that we're going to continue to be in a perpetual stage of just give me this, give me this, give me this. But at the same time, if they're honest about what it is that they're saying, and I guess I might be being a little bit too optimistic about this, but just in the spirit of giving them the chance to do what it is that they say they're going to do, let's just hypothetically say that they're going to do what it is that they say they're going to do. And they're going to bring these resources to the community. Are we going to just refuse them? I think that nobody would refuse resources that is going to benefit them. So I'm kind of confused about why that commenter would be against us getting resources from the government if the government is actually going to give it to us. I wouldn't be opposed to taking what I feel like we're rightfully owed in the first place. But back in the comment section, it says, no offense to the LGBTQ community, but they are not even part of a race, but fought for their freedom. We need to take a page out of their book. It says, you said we can't have it both ways, but you support both. Okay, just to address those first two comments, what I'm saying when I say you can't have it both ways is, if we're not going to do for self, we're going to have to demand from the government. And if we're not going to demand from the government, we're going to have to do for self. But at the same time, while in the process of us doing for ourselves, if the government comes along and says, we have these resources for your community, I think it would be foolish of us to deny those resources, because we've been pounding the pavement for so long saying we want to hold the government accountable and we want this, that, and the third from the government. So again, to the commenter, why would we refuse it? And the commenter says that they're confused, but what is there to be confused about? You know, if they're willing to give something, then take it and go build up your community and put yourself in a position as to where you will finally have the resources that you need and the infrastructure in place to have a functioning community, to where if you don't want to participate in this system, by and large, you don't have to. But we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to take action to get to that point. So again, I can be a proponent of both. I can be a proponent of doing for self, building up and taking what resources we currently already have. And if they come along and give the resources, then so be it. We're not going to refuse it. At least I know I'm not going to refuse it. I don't know about anybody else out there, but I know for a fact that I'm going to take it, because again, I feel like as a descendant of someone in this country who has been mistreated for centuries, that is only fair. And regardless of whether you are an immigrant person in this country, if you're a Black person, you've definitely experienced some type of discriminatory practices within this government. So you should feel like, you know, if they're going to give something, you're going to take it too. I really don't see what the issue is with that. These comments are out of control. These comments are really out of control. Um, the comment says the only reason why they would give resources now is to hold us dependent. I mean, that could backfire on them. They could give us the resources and we could go build and need nothing from them ever again in our lives. I mean, if they give it to us, they don't know exactly what we're going to do with it. So I'm saying, if we get those resources, use it to do something constructive. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying be dependent on the government at all. I'm saying take what you can get and use it to build yourself up to be an independent group of people. I don't really see the issue with that. The comment goes on to say, what would make you think resources would not come with some BS like a chip? You mean I don't get it. Could you elaborate on that? A chip, a microchip? What kind of chip are you referring to? I don't know. If you could provide some type of clarity on chip, what do you mean a chip? Are you saying that we're gonna have to get a chip injected into us, or like what do you mean by that? I know these conversations, they tend to really trigger people, but I feel like that these conversations are necessary. I feel like, we have to begin to open our eyes to our situation and see what's really going on out here, because a lot of times we fail to acknowledge how dire our situation is. But we really need to pay attention, because top economists are telling us where we're headed, economically. But back in the comments, they're saying yes. So I guess they're referring to yes, an implanted chip is what our resources are going to come with. And then another comment to Courtney. Hey, Courtney says, this is so on time. It's the time now more than ever, especially with the world changing at such a fast pace. This is more on time than ever that we acknowledge our situation. I feel like at this point, it can't become any more obvious that our community is at critical mass. You know, even the elected officials now, they're acknowledging it. Now, if they're going to do something about it, it's yet to be seen. And I'm not throwing all my faith behind any president, anybody, any legislator. But what I am saying is just, explore all options is what I'm saying. Explore all options and don't take anything off the table. But definitely don't take do for self off the table, because at the end of the day, that's ultimately what I feel like is going to come down to. Because again, there's more and more groups coming into the country, and we're all being thrown into that minority pot together, which is making resources more and more scarce. So if we're not going to take on the attitude that we're going to demand what it is that we need and pretty much take it, then do for self is going to be the only option. Um, back in back in the commenter says exactly, and he's referring to Omega Courtney, with saying, in regards to politics and knowing where we are, I resent over, I think the comment got cut off. The commenter says 11 million on the way, 11 million on the way in. Yeah, and she's referring to 11 million undocumented immigrants that are on their way into the country. There's going to be resources that need to be distributed to these people that are coming into the country undocumented. And again, I'm not against anybody coming into the country or getting anything, but I do think that as a Black community, especially, as a citizen of this country, you need not let yourself be pushed further behind the line and have people who are just showing up at the border be pushed in front of you. But guys, we're running short on time, and I really want to thank everybody who chimed in and joined the conversation tonight, because again, we have to keep these critical discussions going. It is not my aim to force anybody to do anything that they don't want to do. My purpose for being here is just to enlighten people and let them know what's actually going on out there and provide the truth behind what is going on, because there's a lot of people that will tell you that our situation is not what it is. Now, are we going to sit there and just lay down? Absolutely not. We're going to continue to work hard as we've always done. But at the same time, we need to be able to make sure that if things are being handed out, that we're not missing out and being left out. So thank you again to everybody who joined tonight. I want to invite you all to please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I want to invite everybody to check out my Facebook page, Shelly Speaks Truth. Please go ahead and visit my website, Shelly Speaks Truth at urbancountryfilms.com, shellyspeakstruth.urbancountryfilms.com. Again, please be on the lookout for my book. Later on in this week, I am looking to drop the ebook on Amazon. So please be on the lookout for that. And I will see everybody back here next Sunday at 5. Please share the video and invite others to the conversation. Again, thank you so much for watching, and good night.